So, it's July 22nd, and people often complain that they have a hard time coming up with sufficient color in their perennial garden in July. Well, that must be because they're not using native plants. They're using European cool season plants, because as you can see, this garden is by no means all native, but there's plenty of color, and there are a lot of natives in it. Some things have bloomed out. Here's the Echinacea pallida. Pale purple coneflower has already bloomed out, but really, this time of year, it's getting more colorful because the goldfinches are working on the seeds all the time. And they don't wait for the seeds to mature. They'll eat them at any stage in development. The Liatra's just colored up in the last week. So that's a great plant for getting some color. The mountain mint has only colored up in the last 2-3 weeks with the white blooms that you see here. We got a fair amount of that. It fills in here and there. It's nice. And you see just right there in the center, that's the culver's root, just starting to put on flowers. It's been kind of slow to develop, but it's coming on. The scarlet bee balm, you can't beat it. It's frequently got bumblebees all over it. None right now, unfortunately. Some more liatris, a nice sedge that I don't think we planted there. The pink that you see there right in the center is swamp milkweed, which is just now starting to put on color. A little bit later than a lot of the other milkweeds, so that's nice. The yellow, of course, here is our Heliopsis, Helianthoides, oxeye daisy, fall sunflower. It's been blooming for a good month. We're near the end of the bloom time on the butterfly milkweed, unfortunately. Here we've got Calathea Nepota, which is not a native plant, but blooms, does not produce seed, which is great. But it does bloom, produce a lot of nectar and pollen from about the 4th of July through a good hard freeze, and changes color as the season progresses. This yarrow that you see is volunteer from seed from a cultivar we used to have that turned out to be kind of puny. But that one has hung on pretty well. The Monarda bradburyana has all been bloomed out for quite a while, but it still provides visual impact. We come up in here, and we've got one of my very favorite plants. This is lead plant, which is actually a shrub, as you can see. Things are pretty busy on it. I love these blooms. The gold specks are just stunning. This thing's about 7 years old from a plug. Starting to develop pretty good presence in the garden. We put 3 of them here as to be a centerpiece, which was a questionable decision, but there you are. Here we've got one of our native asters. I don't know which one. It's got little white flowers. We mostly weed these out, but we leave a few spots so that late in the season we do have that white color and the services for the butterflies and the other pollinators. And here we have Queen of the Prairie, just peeking out. As you can see, not all the blooms are completely open yet, but gets covered with all kinds of bees. It also is this along with the lead plant are good traps for Japanese beetles. You see one right up in there. Bring a bowl with some soapy water, put it underneath there, shake the inflorescence a little bit, and they fall off into the soapy water and you kill them. This grass that you see down here, this is a wet area, because you see right behind that chunk of wood, there's an atrium from a perforated pipe that runs along here. It comes from way over there, that downspout that you see in front of the bottle brush buckeye. that downspout and the sump pump. They both come down. There's a line that comes across the garden in a perforated pipe, and then in really wet weather, behind that log is where the water comes out, and it runs down through here where this all this just champsia, this short grass, which handles wet water or wet soil pretty well. We do a pretty good job of keeping all the stormwater on our property and not letting it run off and be other people's problem. This is Asclepias sylvantii, prairie milkweed, which has a bigger bloom than a lot of the milkweeds. Blooms over a longer period of time than a lot of the milkweeds too. It's more sporadic, doesn't put on the big fancy show. Here you see some milkweed bugs on it. Yeah. Not as big as an inflorescence, but each bloom is actually bigger. The red twig dogwood actually has a few blooms on it this time of year, which is kind of unusual. Some more Filipendula, queen of the prairie. Some tall Campanula americana, tall bellflower, yeah, which is more of a woodland plant, but it's a short-lived plant, an annual or biennial, depending on when the seed germinates. Really nice blue color. You don't get a lot of good blues like that, an opportunity. Down in here, not bloomed out yet, is Syphilatica, lobelia syphilatica, the great blue lobelia. It'll be blooming soon. This lavender Culver's root, I don't think we bought a cultivar here, but we do bring strays home. This one I think just happens to be lavender color instead of white. The honeybees are, well, there's a honeybee there on it. There's a bumblebee working over here. There's another bumblebee working over here. Yeah, and some rudbeckia, some black-eyed Susans have been colonizing this area. This is a project on my neighbor's property where I'm killing off a bunch of bishop's weed, goutweed, whatever you want to call it, snow on the mountain, using green wood chips. Put them on about a green, hot wood chips, put them on about a foot thick. And they burn the stuff down, and then when it resprouts, it's like it's resprouting up into an oven. And back there you see some fresh chips I just put down a couple days ago. It's like the stuff's resprouting up into an oven, and it kills it. It just continually knocks it back, and finally it wears it out. And it dies. Let me see. Let's go up here, and oh, there was a hummingbird up there. Just flew away. Saw me coming. Too bad. Because this is the star of the show in our garden right now. This is Silene regia, royal catchfly. From the day the first bloom opens up, hummingbirds come here continually. It's getting to where almost every time we look out the window, we see hummingbirds on this thing. We've got some Summer Beauty Allium down there, which is a sterile plant. It does produce nectar and pollen, but it doesn't produce viable seeds, so it's well behaved. Alliums can be really aggressive in your landscape. So I don't mind having that one because it provides services, but it doesn't make for a lot of extra work. These little flowers here, this is Ruellia humulus, I believe, are Prairie Petunia. Each bloom just lasts one day, but and then it falls off, or just you can see flowers from yesterday laying around. But it spreads around and covers ground nicely. This is a good plant that we need to plant more of. This is Prairie Willow, and this plant, it's not in the ground yet, but I have a place for it. I'm preparing. The thing about willows, in our zip code, they support like 300 different species of caterpillars. That's a lot. And we don't have very many good ones for landscape use. Our native pussy willows work, and the prairie willow works, and they bloom very, very early in the season when the earliest bumblebees are coming out of the ground. These things are blooming, providing a nectar source so they can get their first meal. Here is one of my favorite plants. This is Monarda Punctata, spotted bee balm, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. Look at all this. We put like 3 or 4 royal catchflies in this garden, and they've been spreading by seed. They make quite a show. Some more tall bellflower. Let's go over on the other side of the yard and look at, here's another Heliopsis. Here's a different echinacea that is blooming now. This is the purpurea. Blooms a little later, gives you an extension of your color. This side of the garden has a lot more structure to it, big woody plants to give people something to look at. This part in the middle, we're actually working on a project right now, changing the vegetation. Some that's a nice Carpinus. It has the growth habit of a European one. I hope it's not the wrong one. This is purple poppy mallow, which covers ground beautifully in April and then sprawls out and makes these beautiful flowers. I just brought these in last fall. We'd never grown it before. It does produce seed, so they come up volunteer here and there. My neighbor or somebody I work for had too many of them. I dug some up and brought them home. Another butterfly milkweed. Here's this nice Monarda Punctata. There's nothing. Usually anytime you come by this thing, there's a wasp, or usually wasps, black wasps like it a lot. They crawl all over it. It's a short-lived plant. It produces a lot of seed and lives 2 or 3 years and then dies, but because it produces so much seed, when you have a disturbance in the garden, this is what will often come up and fill up that space. And then it goes away, so you never know. You know, it provides surprise, which is a good thing. There's a hydrangea, quickfire, I believe. There's a nice sign. Here's some penstemon, a peony, a bunch more echinacea back here. This is an area that used to be a trail, used to be a pathway through the garden, but you know, we thought the plants had a better idea, so it's not anymore. Showy goldenrod, not showy right now, but it will be. And well behaved, it doesn't spread like your tall goldenrod, stays in place, does produce seed, but puts on nice flowers. Here we've got some side oats grandma, Bouteloua, a nice ironweed, which hasn't bloomed yet, but this will be putting on color in August, which is a nice time to have color. There's a nice yellow birch that we grew from a gallon pot Guy Sternberg gave us. Some sumac. The light's not great on this, but that's our garden. Thanks for coming by.